What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Rush Hour Talk. This is Pete.
This is Ray.
And today we got a very special guest for you guys. He's a true LA OG as well. He's a big brother to both Ray and I, and he's very generous with his wisdom. We have Tommy Dang here today. What's up, Tommy? How you doing, man?
What's up? Hey, Pete. Hey, Ray. How's it going?
Welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure.
It's going well, man. So a little bit about Tommy. So he's this guy from what I understand anyway, gave Ray a little tidbit on how to become the Ray that he is today. He refuses to take credit for obvious reasons, but he's always been like a big brother to us, giving us advice that we didn't realize we needed. Much appreciated. So we definitely appreciate every time you felt like you messed up and you shared that advice with us. So thank you, Tommy.
Yeah, 100%.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's my pleasure, guys. Much as I can, spread the knowledge, spread the love.
So Tommy, it's been a long time. And I got to check in with how your family is. How's mom and pops, and how are you and Ellie and the kids?
Yeah, the family's doing pretty well. Unfortunately, because the whole quarantine, right? Mom, dad, sis, brother-in-law, they're all like in LA, and then of course we're located in OC, Irvine specifically. Mm-hmm. But everyone's holding up. Good spirits in general, staying healthy, which is probably the biggest thing. But it's challenging, especially at the beginning. Mm-hmm. Indoors, not going out. The virus hit, everyone's scared. Who do you talk to? You don't talk to anybody. Yeah. You don't want to see anybody. You're scared to breathe, right? And over time, you get used to it. So now we're at the point where we feel comfortable going out. Of course, with the mask on, and you take the proper precaution to ensure that you don't catch the virus.
I mean, Tommy, I'm glad to hear at least you guys are doing things. I mean, like how has it been like quarantine with the boys? I'm sure that's a huge change for you and Ellie.
Yeah, it's a huge change. It's difficult. Mm-hmm. They got their school going on, right? You got to support them. They have questions. Finding crayons, like pencil. You think about very simple things, right? Just make sure everything's all set up, and then just make sure they're moving along. But the teacher is doing a great job, especially this time around. When it happened prior to summer, was difficult. The school system was not ready for that. So every morning they just basically send instructions and you do it. So this year is different that they actually have like daily Zooms with the teacher. So that kind of helps kind of move them along. But then just keeping them entertained and focused and the balance of schoolwork. And, I like physical things and getting the kids out there. So that's been a challenge, right? To kind of get out there. And then on top of that, you add in the fires that's going on with the smoke and unhealthy air. So now you have even less reason to kind of get out there, right?
Yeah. I mean that just sounds crazy. I mean, like I don't know if people still think global warming is fake, but I mean this shit is outrageous.
Of course, people still think it's fake.
I think Ray and I both met you through Kat, right?
That's correct. Yeah, that's what I remembered. I know you guys all went to school together.
Yeah, we all went to school together.
Peter, you probably met Tommy before me, if he ever picked up Kat from King.
I've been by Kat's place when I was a kid, but I don't think I was like old enough to hang out with Tommy yet. You know what I mean? So if anybody's wondering who Kat is Tommy's younger sister who that I grew up with since 6th grade. And then we all went to high school with her. And that's how we all started hanging out. But yeah, so by the time we were going over to your house, Tommy, you guys were already in El Monte, right? Like when everybody was hanging out?
I'm thinking perhaps. So you never met up at the old apartments?
No, I did.
I think we dropped off Kat a couple of times at the old apartments, but we never actually went inside to hang out with you guys and the family. At least I didn't. But I do fondly remember you guys purchasing that new home, and I was driving over there. I do remember you picking me up one time in your red hatchback.
Yeah, the old reliable Civic.
Yeah, your reliable Civic. Yeah. I also remember when you got your Acura what's it called?
RSX. RSX, baby.
Yep, Type S. I remember that stick shift when you and I went to a bar, and then we came out and some dude had dinged your car. Oh man, you let that other car have it.
Do you remember the place, the club, or no?
Yes, of course I remember the place. I'll never forget.
What is the place?
It's called Miss Kitty. Doesn't exist anymore. But yeah. Good times.
Tommy was like you had some confidence in you, man.
That's the truth. That is the truth. Yeah. I mean, when we used to go out, you had more confidence than anybody I had met. And like I said, it really, really did help me out a lot because I never really had like that solid father figure in my life. I'm not saying that you're a father figure, but I just didn't know what it was like to have that kind of, I don't care. I'm just going to be myself, let things happen. And it was good to see an example of that in action, whether or not you were successful or not. It was still good to see it,
Yeah. Hey, you learn from failing too, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I did see you fail a lot.
Yeah.
but it made it okay. That's how you learned it. And
Tell us about where you grew up in.
No, so I came here, I think the early 80s, either 80 or 81, roughly. I think it was either 4 years old or 5 years old. Basically, like preschool age, most likely 4. So when we immigrated from Vietnam, so that's where I was born in Hanoi. Came here as refugees. I think we were sponsored here by through our relatives / cousins that already migrated here, and then we pretty much stayed in LA. That's pretty much I grew up in LA, specifically around the whole near downtown Echo Park, Elysian Park, Dodger Stadium area. So the apartments that's actually in Echo Park, I don't think that was the first place that we stayed at. So I vaguely remember the other apartment, but I think I was so young, I just don't remember. So all my memories really starting from the apartment where Linda, right, my cousin, where she grew up as well. With I think her parents currently still living there. So I think you guys still know the old apartment, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I grew up. Just going to school and walking around the neighborhood, just like you guys. Just bus pass, bicycle. Well, you start off with walking, and then you get a bicycle. You bike around the neighborhood, right? Having fun, and then you get your bus and you bust around everywhere. And then finally you get old enough, you get a car and drive around, and that kind of opened up your geolocation, right? In terms of where you're gonna
go. It was a game changer as soon as you got your car,
exactly,
man. Yeah. So what were the schools did you go to? What high school did you go to?
So I went to Verdugo Hills High.
Yeah.
So they're based in Sunland, Tahunga. So I was bussed in. So every morning, literally have to wake up early. I can't remember what time, but it's early for maybe not early now because I'm older, but it's definitely early when I was like that age. Like you gotta wake up like 6 in the morning or something like that. Basically walk from my apartment, walking to with the elementary school, right? And then wait for the bus to pick us up. So I did that for not only high school, but also did that for junior high. And so the big question is why did I do that? Actually, I don't even know. It just for some reason, I think potentially my older cousin might have went to school there, and then my name got dropped into the selection hat, and then was bussed in there. So I think long story short, during that time, those schools, especially up in the valley, was they don't have enough students to go there, right? Not enough students, not enough funding. How do you get funding? You open it up like 50% or whatever percentage up to the surrounding counties, right, or cities. And then the lucky ones or unlucky ones are chosen, and then you're bussed in there to basically fill in the seats, right?
Yeah, I mean, back in the days, even when Peter and I were in our heyday of high school, Belmont was packed. So I'm sure during your time it's probably even worse. So it makes sense that you were bussed to the valley.
How was it different going to or being in that Verdugo Hills area versus when you came back home to Echo Park every day?
No, it's different. And then going back to your kind of earlier something, like it's from my perspective, it's just sheer luck. My parents didn't know any better. No. I didn't know any better. It's just completely sheer luck. Yeah. But the difference, it's reflecting back now, like what I'm thinking, it wasn't as a big deal when you're younger, right? You're younger, you have like different type of lens on, but I mean, picture this, right? Like, believe it or not, I would ditch once in a while from school, right? That was a hard concept to just like
Yeah.
root ditch. And then
Hey, you better be careful. Xander's going to see this podcast at some
I
point.
know.
Now, after he gets a job, he can see the podcast.
Yeah, with friends that actually lived in that area, and you would walk by, and cars would have their windows down halfway. It's not all locked up, and as we would go into their house, the doors are not locked, and no one's home. Can you imagine that? I don't think it happens today in the same neighborhood, but back then, it was really, it didn't seem that uncommon in that area to see that type of looseness in terms of protection of your personal property, such as car and home, etc. Right?
No, I was gonna say this is different part of California altogether, but that shock that you had about going to people's homes and car doors being unlocked. I had that 2 years ago, and that was Laguna Beach. I was working with a company down there, and I was really close to the guy, and he sometimes would send me over to his house. He's like, "Yeah, the door's open. Nobody locks their doors here." I was like, and mind you, these are like $10 million homes. There's all this stuff in there, and it was weird, but in a way, I'm like, that's awesome. Like to have that sense of safety and security. It's really nice, So
I think it means more to kids who like maybe grew up like the way we did, or like in the inner city, right?
I didn't realize metal doors weren't a thing everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
like what? You don't have a metal door
right now. I mean, like where I live, I don't have any bars or anything on my windows, right? But for some reason, like the inside of me is like, fuck, I want to put some bars on those windows. I just don't know, man. I can't tell. Like, and then when I go on vacation with Christina and my wife, and we go up to her town, we're staying at this house, like this winery is fucking dead quiet, right? It's super quiet. The gates are like, you could open it. There's no locks and stuff like that. And every time it was so quiet, I heard the wind. I was like, what the fuck was that? And she had to be like, just chill, man. That's just the wind, dude. I was like, you sure it's not someone trying to come in or some shit? Yeah. But Tommy, going back to you real quick, so you said it was different being in Verdugo, but what was it like for you growing up in Echo Park back in the 80s and part of the 90s?
Yeah, I mean, to reflect back now, it's I think it goes back to your earlier statement where you kind of in it, it almost becomes normal, right? Yeah. So for me, like my normal back then it's normal for me to walk in the streets and see cholos.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
So on a good day, they don't harass you too much, right? Yeah. And occasionally they harass you, right? And it's like the one that don't harass you are the one that stands in front of their house and looks at everyone that drives by, right? So So right, I mean we all seen that, right? So those are cool. They don't harass you. And there's some that walks around neighborhood, with the pit bull or dog of their choice, right? Dobermans, etc., right? So they tend to kind of act a little bit tough. We definitely got harassed here and there, even with my older cousins. They're just sheer size and outnumber as you kind of walk into the neighborhood, and then also normal to occasionally see people passed out in the street, either drunk or hurt, etc. Right? I'm not sure if you guys seen that. And then at nighttime, it's almost like a live theater of us sitting in front of like it's a balcony, right? The apartment, if you can picture the apartment, is 2 stories, right? And each floor has an area almost like a balcony or porch, etc., right? And then it kind of overlooks the street which is Echo Park Avenue. And then back then, it's at least once a week. I remember it could be more or less frequent, but right now it's like, let's say once a week. You hear shooting, car chase, sirens.
Yeah.
When you do hear pop, and then you hear a family member crying, right? And then you hear sirens. You hear squeal of the tire spinning or spinning away.
Yeah.
So all that it wasn't. It's like you witness it, but it wasn't a big thing, But now I'm like, man, like why would I want to live there? Why want to see that? But when you're in there, like you said, it's like, oh, that's his life. Like it happens, right? Because I grew up around this. I see this every week, every day, every hour. How it depends on your frequency.
It's when you talk about like city noises. My sister to this day chooses to live in downtown LA because she's like, I'm just used to the noise. I can't not live anywhere else. Obviously she's living in a much, much nicer place than we used to live in before, but there's something, I guess, comforting to her to hear the city noise, whether it's, a helicopter or siren. Obviously, something bad's happening. It's not something that she wants to be a part of, but it's just, she's conditioned to, to be in that environment.
What was it like growing up as one of the few Asian people in Echo Park?
Yeah, it didn't feel all that out of place during that time, and just because you're at this age where, I guess the elders or the adults wasn't a conversation that you would have with other folks, right? Because like what you said earlier, especially with immigrant parents, right? And then I'm surrounded by immigrant people in general, whether my immediate family, cousins, and then even the people living in an apartment, Hispanic, but they're good people, immigrants as well. They're all busy working, just, putting food on the table, kids going to school. It's following that program, right? And then I played well with other kids in the neighborhood, right? I mean, the only people that you encounter once in a while was like the people that actually harass you was the cholos. But in your mind, cholos like basically gangsters, etc. But that's the norm, right? And that's
what they do.
Yeah, that's what they do, right? So it wasn't into like, hey, because I'm Chinese or and they're not. You don't think about it because you think, well, they're just bad people because they're cholos, and you get reinforcement from watching TVs, right? Especially 80s kind of gangster movies, right? Like Colors with like Ice-T, right? I don't know if you guys remember that movie, with Sean.
I know what you love that song too.
Yeah, that song, right? but that matches exactly the era I was growing up in, right? It's more of gangbanging of like the colors, not the color of your skin, but the color you're associated with, whether you belong to this gang or that gang, and actually your geolocation. I think that was more of a threat in terms of if you look at from a micro perspective, like the community we live in Echo Park specifically, right? It was like, not like a bunch of like Hispanic people didn't like Chinese and Chinese didn't like Hispanic. Well, I didn't feel that growing up, or didn't notice, right? So maybe because I'm naive, I'm young, I just knows what it's really everyone in general was immigrants trying to put food on the table, and I can care less like what you look like because I'm busy working my ass off.
Because when we talk about that period, late 80s, early 90s, you usually hear about the Latino and Black gangs, but Asian gangs were also kind of prevalent in their own way, So, and I, from hanging out with both of you guys, I knew those Asian gangs were around you, and I'm sure you guys both. I know for sure, Peter, you've had friends that are in it. So how did you two stay away from that? How did you guys maintain the course to get to where you're at and stay out of trouble?
For me, it just I'll be blunt. I mean, I was approached. I recall at least a couple of times, and I politely declined. So it's I remember the latest scenario, whether it's I guess the Asian gang team member. He goes around the neighborhood, goes around the school. So like we all, you all see each other, right? So,
gang team member. How old are you, Tom? How old are you, Tom? This gang associate over here.
Yeah, I don't know why, but it didn't seem like wasn't not my personality. I didn't feel like during that time I needed to belong to something, right? Like I don't know. I guess I don't want to get into psychology of like a gang member and why would you join, etc. During my time was straightforward, right? Like if you think about it, right? You take a step back, immigrants coming here to the U.S. My parents were first generation. It was pretty obvious that money was lacking, right? We're poor, right? Like certain cases, like you're lucky to even have food on the table at certain times, right? And then even on occasion where you go to the market, you see a cool toy you like, I will be so nervous and I will break a sweat and don't even have the courage to even ask my dad, hey, can you buy me that toy? Just because I knew how poor we were, right? Keep in mind, right? Like we live in a one bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
Pretty much single source of income. My mom did work, but she took odd jobs and like sewing. Like it's like what do you see in TV, right? You take an Asian older lady taking odd jobs like sewing at home. That's what my mom did, right? And then my dad's a machinist, and he worked for like $9 an hour, $8 an hour, $7 an hour, and if you kind of scale back then to kind of like the 80s price of things, right, per hour, right? So it was not a lot of money. In today's standard, I mean, might as well just be on welfare, right? But in that standard, you're still low income, but still making money just enough to kind of pay the rent, utility, etc. So how does it relate to me like being focused? So then you just want to go to school. You try to do like the best you can, like to kind of get out of it, right, to a certain degree. But then when you're young, you don't. I guess it's maybe at the subconscious level. Like I didn't consciously think about that. It just now that I'm reflecting, is more subconscious because that's what I see in my parents, and that's what I see in my cousins and friends and just people in general around the neighborhood, and people just busting the butt to put food on the table. And the last thing you want to do is like gangbanging out in the streets, right?
Lucky with Peter, is that how you stayed away from all that stuff too? I remember you wearing lots of red and lots of dragon chains back in the day. I have a bunch of photos here all about that.
Yeah, I really thought I belonged to what is it, those gangs out there?
Yeah, I remember people thought that you were. I'm like, no, he's not. He's freaking Pete.
No, I just really like Jordan. I like Jordan, so I wore red a lot. I like dragons because I like dragons. I mean, I didn't really belong in anything, but I think much like Tommy, I definitely had my chances to really, really fuck up my life pretty easily. I was approached quite often, and I think I had my friends, and like much like Tommy, like I would rather go play ball with Ray, or I would rather go to the mall with Ray. It seemed less difficult than like let's let's do this this gang stuff. And actually thinking back now, I'm just like it occurs to me that my mom raised me from when I was a baby until like I was like 15, able to get a job on like a $9,000 salary.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So at that point, I'm just like, if you guys fathom what that's like, right? Even now, that's not a lot of money. Like annually, she was getting like $800 a month. You know what I mean? For like however long, and she did exactly what Tommy was talking about. The Asian women that were like seamstress and like they worked in factories and stuff like that. She did that for however long. So much like Tommy's sentiment, it's like, well, I'm not about that, and I've seen what that can do to people, and if this is what I care about, why would I do that? But not to say that I was never enticed. I mean, they were super cool to me. It was super appealing to be a rebel. You know what I mean? Chicks like rebels.
Is that why?
But I feel like,
is that why you're a rebel?
No, I mean, I felt like, I mean, we're all rebels in our own way, but I just felt like I didn't. I mean, if I botch this, that's it. It's just me and my mom. Like, what's gonna happen to us? You know what I mean? It's like that's it.
On top of that, like I see the gangsters like drunk
streets.
there. You see, like you live in the street, you see the streets, and like, do I want to be that person? Right? That's subconscious level, like, hey, like dead in the street or drunk in the street, right? You don't, Yeah. So I think that naturally kind of mold you into your decision making, and some good and some bad, right?
I want to take it back to Tommy's high school days. We skipped over the fact that you played a lot of football.
Not a lot. I played my senior year. I always wanted to play, but like I feel like just busy goofing around, just like hanging out with the boys, right? Playing like just casual basketball, etc. But yeah, so then I didn't really learn to play real kind of like more at the school level, competitive level until my senior year.
What position did you play? Were you successful? Was the team successful?
No, the team was okay. I mean, it wasn't successful in any way. But it's my first year, right? Getting to know the system. I don't think I was very good. I was learning. So the position I played was basically cornerback, and then safety.
Mhm.
Then at one point, I even played kind of D line a little bit. Can you believe that my size, right? But high school, right? I mean, you're not. I'm not in a high school where like you're like a national ranked team. So I'm not saying I was starting in any way. And I also play strong safety.
My guess is you love to hit then, because it's all defense that you're talking
Yeah,
about.
I like to hit. I did try for receiver,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the learning curve during that time was a bit high for me, because then you got to learn the routes, you got to learn all the plays, right? And then to jump in like your final year to learn all that, it didn't suit me right away. So then I don't recall whether I asked about playing defense, or maybe the coach saw it and said, "Hey, you want to try defense?" Right? I'm sure it's the latter, right? Yeah, so it was fun. I mean, I still vaguely remember one of the strong safety, the starting strong safety. I guess he had some altercation with the coach, and I think it had to do with me kind of like also being in the same position.
Mm-hmm.
He got a pissed off something, and I think he blew a fuse, and either he say fuck it, I'm gonna quit, or the coach did something to kind of force him to make a decision, and he made the decision not to return and play.
Jesus.
Yeah, and that's midway through the season, and that's how I got my starting position actually. Safety. And I don't think I did a terrific job. I mean, I definitely got chewed up by the coach here and there. But again, keep in mind it's your first year playing. You gotta learn all the plays, learn to read the defense, right? All that, and in between all that, you gotta look back. The coach making hand signal, you learn the hand signal. Is it for me? Is it for other people? Right? So it's like it was a little bit messy and chaotic for me personally, but it was great. I loved it though.
Asian kid playing high school football. You know, usually it's like play tennis.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, I was the only one. I was the only Asian in my school that played football.
Yeah, but how did that go with your mom and dad? Like your dad was like cool.
No, my dad was cool. So a lot of decisions I make, I tend not to ask.
Yeah,
I just do it. Something like we're talking about like motorcycles, etc. I don't ask. Hey, like how would you feel if I buy one? I'm like I want it. I'm just gonna do it, right?
Yeah.
And then then we can have discussions later if you don't like it, right? So go back to the football. Yeah, I did something that I wanted to do, something different. Like you see it in TV, NFL is a big deal. I mean, of course, there's NBA, etc. Right? But like I feel like I can't just go to the park and play football. I can't go to the park and put on my helmet, shoulder pads, and play scrimmage with other people, right? During that time, especially in Echo Park, right? So, but the things that I was able to do,
you could, you just might not survive it.
Yeah, exactly, right. So the things that I could do is like, would you like basketball? I can do pickup games. I would go to like Chinatown and Alpine Street, that area, right? You can always do pickup games here and there. So that's something I feel like I can do, but for football, I can't. So that kind of like thought, hey, you know what? It's my senior year. I'm just gonna give it a shot. Like I have nothing to lose except just go there, talk to the coach, right? Say I'm interested in joining the football team, And I don't remember the conversation. It just feels like it's like many moons ago. I don't know if back then you actually had to talk to the coach, but I do remember having conversation with the coach, and I do remember basically just showing for practice and going through the routine. But what was fun. It was a great time. But I mean, like. It's also some negative part, right? Like how Ray mentioned, like, hey, like I'm the only black guy, right?
Yeah.
So in this specific case, I was the only like Asian or Chinese guy in the team. There's no one else. So naturally, when people look at you, like come on, you can't cover me. Like no way, right? Like you suck. Which they're right? In high school, but I think in high school it was a little more forgiving because you're high school. You're all just fucking around anyways, and we're not a team that we're like top rank and go to the national champion, and we don't have any All-American in the. So if you think about the team itself, it's generally people just having fun, and certain team members take it more serious than others. I get that, right? But if you think about collective as a team, we weren't a top tier champions team, so the pressure is not there to perform. You know what I mean? So I think when I went to junior college, when I tried out for the team, I definitely feel more of it. Like again, I was like the only kind of like Asian guy, and you know, you got the receiver that's 6'2", 6'3",
Yeah.
you know, looking at you. And like every time I went to guard that person, you know, they always like they all have a signal like, hey, like
right here,
looking back the quarterback, like, hey man, throw it to me, right?
Yeah.
You know, but by that time I gotten better, and I was able to kind of prove myself that I can like manage more or less. So I'm assuming you're not all American. Assuming you're not like D1 material, right? I can hang for a little bit, you know.
There's this edge, right, that you have, right? Like there's this competitiveness that you have, right? It has nothing to do with like domination or anything like that. But you're almost like one of the one of the first Asian guys that I've seen that's like crossed like racial barriers and stuff. Like you almost have no fear just existing. And I mean, do you feel like that's a competitive part of you, or you just like don't give a fuck? Like you just, I'm going to do this.
Ooh, that's a good one. And
like because there's competitive people, like I want to see if I can do this.
Yeah. And
then there's people who is like, I want to do this and I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I think. I mean, I'm talking about specifically for me, right? Like if I'm reflecting on that question, it's like, you know, I am competitive, right? To a certain degree, and I see that my older son, right? When he loses in Monopoly or rock paper scissors, oh my god, he goes crazy, right? So I know that feeling. Like I don't like to lose, especially younger, right?
Where do you think he got it from, Tommy? He didn't get out of nowhere. Man.
So there's some competitive kind of like DNA, right? And then certain parts where kind of like going back to what Ray kind of mentioned earlier, like when we go out, like certain times, like, you know, like you don't give a fuck, and certain times you do, right? So like I'm always kind of like emotionally, mentally, you're flip flopping depending on the situation, you know, right? Depending on what you're doing during that time. So I would say it'll be a combination of both.
I purposely asked you both those attributes because I had a feeling it was a combination of both, because I've seen Tommy do both. Right? I mean, like he's really cool and like chill with us and stuff. But you know, get Tommy in the wild though, man. It's like, get the fuck out of my way. I'm doing this shit. I can see him like some big ass dude walk up to him. He'd be like, "Who the fuck are you, man?" I mean, Ray, can you confirm or deny anything that I'm saying?
All that Tommy, one of the most fearless people I know. You know, nothing scared. I mean, you know, within reason.
Within reason.
Within reason, but you know, he's just it was you know, he was just a fearless guy, fearless, fun guy that you always wanted to be around.
I mean, well, first off, he's like, I'm riding motorcycles, you know, I'm driving RSX. I mean, back then RSX type S's were like, God damn. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it was, right? But like for me, as an Asian kid growing up, you see what Asian people do and what they feel like. Tommy didn't feel like that to me.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Stereotypical,
like,
yeah.
And it's, I mean, like, and no, I can't believe I'm saying this, but no offense to Asian people, right? Like much respect. But like Tommy was different, you know what I mean? To me, he was different, you know, and he was one of the other Asian guys I saw grow up in Echo Park that was more relatable in so many ways to even people like you and I, you know what, right? Like the younger boys in the hood that were immigrants and so on and so forth. You didn't like stick to one ethnicity because of that very same mindset that you told us about. It was just a community of immigrants, right? And that was, I think, what was really something that Tommy was different. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's like a fearlessness to him, but it's not like a confidence. He was just fearless. You know what I mean?
As you say all those words, like just keep thinking about different small moments. You know,
let's hear it, right?
No, I can't just know them.
I promise I'll edit it out. Don't worry. Tommy's 2 kids in. He's good. What's done is done, man. So Ray, you're telling me that the Raymond that I see when we go out now was large in part due to this man right here, right?
Yep. So all my failures and successes.
If you look at it, if you look at it that way, yeah, I
Yeah,
felt it.
I'll take the credit off for the failures. Yeah.
So what was it about? What was it about Ray where you're like, I'm going to take this guy out and show him the ropes?
That is
Was he just like a shy kid to you or something?
No, I don't think I thought about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've been friends with Ray, right? I mean, you fall in the same bucket. Like you guys are like, you guys are good people. You know what I'm saying? It's actually my pleasure going out with you guys and hang out, having fun, and just doing shit together and doing guy things. You know? So I never thought about like oh yeah, this poor guy, or actually, to be frank, I don't think I thought about anybody like that. And like, oh yeah, you know, like I feel sorry for this person, or anyway, like I gotta take this person under my wing. Maybe naturally it happens, right? Because you know, like whether it's unfortunate, because I'm like 9 years ahead, so I've definitely potentially done similar things, right? I know time changes here and there, but yeah, it just like guys going out having fun. And you know, if I need some encouragement, you know, Ray would encourage me, and vice versa, right? If Ray needs some encouragement, I provide that.
When Ellie came into your life, I saw a really different Tommy. I don't know. Do you feel like that, Ray?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, right. All of a sudden, Tommy was Thomas. And you know, it was funny. The story that you know, you told me about how you guys met was through partying. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, you guys were partying, and then you guys met each other in
Vegas.
Yeah, we met in Vegas, of all places. Yeah, through a mutual friend. So I was there with my family on a family trip, and then our set of friends. So a mutual friend, and they had plans on going. So we kind of communicated and decided to meet up, and you know, history from there, I guess, right?
Wait. So when you say family trip, are you just saying family trip? So it sounds better than what you were actually doing?
No. So for a while, myself, mom, and dad, at the minimum, right, and then you know, Kat, right. So we'll go to Vegas like annually, because you know, my parents love Vegas, and they're not big gamblers, but they love gambling. Meaning they're not big in terms of high stake gambling. They're very low stakes, right? Like penny slots and nickel slots and stuff like that, right? Quarter slots, you know. So we would normally make an annual Vegas trip. So during that time, I coordinated with a mutual friend, and decided to kind of meet up. So I can't recall the club that we met at. Oh, the club, it escapes me now. I'm sure like after this podcast, I'm like, oh yes, that's the name of the club. I don't remember now.
What hotel was it in?
No.
You don't remember what hotel the club was in?
It might have been
Venetian.
Marquee.
Encore.
No, see, that's the funny thing, because we go so often, and all the name like rings a bell, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna let you go on your story. You might remember as you're telling me.
Yeah, so I might remember.
So go ahead.
No, but yeah, I mean, it's actually pretty innocent if you think about it. It was no crazy story. So you know, when we first met up, we didn't really like anything. Like you would kind of talk, get to know each other. You do a little bit of dancing, you do a little bit of drinking. And then some more drinking, and then you get a little bit like braver, right? So the natural course, and then we hit it off pretty well, I thought, in Vegas, and we think we met up for at least maybe a couple of nights, I believe. But yeah, it was frankly, it was very innocent. And then all of a sudden the trip's over, and we head back, and oddly enough, we didn't get back in touch until months later.
Really?
If you can believe that, yeah.
Whoa!
I know, right?
What? Okay, so
why didn't you keep it going?
I don't know why. I mean, it's also on the back of the mind. I think. Like, keep in mind, right? Like my memory now, it's like year after year, it's getting a little bit cloudier, right? But I do remember we did keep in touch of. Like maybe like friend functions here and there, right? And you would see each other. but we didn't really kind of like date or kind of move to that level until probably a couple months afterwards. I think to be honest now, remember, like I like anything, I was busy as well, right? Like you're busy going out, you're meeting out, like going out with friends, male, female, right? So you're doing other things, and during that age, you're constantly like busy, right? So what luck would have it, we actually went almost full circle, and we met back up, and then kind of like start building the relationship from there.
So who started the building?
Yeah, who made the first move?
Yeah, who actually?
Well, define the first move, like in terms of getting the
know,
date, or like what do you mean?
No, like I gotta say, like when did it occur to you that I like this girl and I want to see her more?
Well, it actually occurred in Vegas,
Yeah.
right?
All right.
But again, because think about it, right? Like using this analogy, like you're a young buck, right, during that time, right? And then you're out there all the time, right? Then it's almost making your rounds in a certain way, right? And I don't know what's the best way to say it without sounding like an asshole, right? But you're just busy going out, and then it's all in the back of mind, and then I would have these connections here and there, and then finally, like I would like. I guess probably me, I guess to put it that way, is like I would make the move to kind of push the relationship to the next level, right? To whatever that means in terms of the next level, meaning meeting it more often and getting to know each other like more kind of like deeper kind of / intellectual level.
Knowing just how many, how fearless you are and how many people you meet, if I can put it like that. What was it about Ellie that initially got your attention? Like, this is worthwhile. It's not just like someone I'm meeting.
So I mean, the one thing that stood out was like, and maybe I don't know what's the best way to phrase this, but like you're like a good person, like a wholesome person, right? And a person that you feel like you can trust and can like talk to. You don't feel like you don't like I don't have to pretend. I don't have to. I mean, I guess I guess everybody has to pretend or put on an act to a certain degree over kind of like the beginning of the like any relationship, right? But I felt that we can, at least I felt that I can be myself.
Mhm.
I don't feel like like I have to front too much, at least to a certain degree, right? And have kind of like real conversation, so and then that's the vibe I receive as well. Like she's like I don't know, just like a wholesome good girl in a way, right? I mean, we all done crazy, like I think Ray witnesses, right? Like we've done stuff together, like us three, like going out and plus other friends. That's some nutty stuff. But I don't know.
I would say this, that like Ellie approached me. This is early on in their relationship, and she said she had never seen Tommy drunk. I was like, "What? You never seen Tommy drunk? I got you." I think it was his birthday.
Oh my god, yeah.
I overdid it, Pete. Tommy's on the yeah. You got
Raymond.
What?
Man, all right.
Track record of getting my friends pretty shifty.
Yeah, Raymond has. I mean, like sometimes it's not on purpose. That part's the annoying part, and somehow it's like all his friends. There's always a story of how Ray did something, and then this person was fucking trashed. Right?
I remember that. It was at Burbank Bar and Grill.
Burbank Bar and Grill, yeah, I got it.
Yeah, I think it's the first time I blacked out. Believe it or not.
Wait, was I? I think I was there for that.
Probably.
You were there. I don't know if you were there for the aftermath.
Yeah, I was there because didn't they have that pineapple steak or something like that?
It was delicious, and then
oh my god, I remember that night. Holy shit!
Yeah, the outdoor band and the indoor cover band. Yeah, it was a fun place during that time.
We went there for a while. Yeah.
No, I remember specifically going for Tommy.
Yeah,
like it was specific for. Otherwise, I don't think I would have heard it. But Ray, what you're saying is that Ellie never saw Tommy drunk, and you made it a mission that night to get Tommy drunk.
I was like, I got you. I'll get Tommy drunk, and she was like, "Oh my god!" And then from after that, she's seen Tommy drunk multiple times, and then she's like, "Okay, I don't need to see this anymore." We all really, really love Ellie. Ellie's awesome because she knows when it's time to take care of business, and she knows when it's time to have fun and let loose. And she's the right balance of both.
Right.
All right. So for those of you who don't know Ellie, she's a complete boss. She's really sweet, and she has a demeanor like the girl next door type, in which, no, and let me finish.
I'm laughing because I know where you're going, and I completely agree with what you're just gonna say.
She's a really sweet person, and like I've always known her, and I've always really respected her because she's also really intelligent. She's well spoken, and she's like very mindful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But she scares the shit out of me, and I'm gonna tell you why. And I never got to see this side of. No, that's not true. I've seen it a couple times, but you guys remember Kat's bachelor party?
Yeah.
So Tommy, you went out the one night, and then Ellie went out like the next night or something like that, right? And I remember at some point, I felt like I was chaperoning, like the girls, and we were like all chaperoning, but Ellie was like, I guess it's like once every so often she goes out, she was like drinking, and then she was coming up to me, and she was like, "Peter, come here." I was like, "Okay," and then like I would go over there, and she's like, "Take the shot, you little bitch." I was like, "Oh my god!" I was like,
"Yeah,
okay." And then I drank, and then like she was like, "All right, cool." And then 15 minutes later, and then she sees me without like without a drink, and I'm just like hanging out and stuff like here. She's like, I would see her like looking across the way, like, "Hey, little bitch!"
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah,
and I was like, "Oh my god, dude!" I was like, but the funny thing is, it wasn't like she was belligerent or anything. Like she was in control. She was fine. It's just that when she parties, she's just like, "You having a good time? Are you having a good time? Let's all have a good time."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, "Oh my god." But and then afterwards, I think all the girls were like, "Hey, maybe we should go with Ellie to make sure she gets back fine." You know what I mean? She's like, "Nah, I'm good. Don't worry about it."
Yeah.
She's like, "Nah." And then, and I think you probably remember that night. She got back. Apparently, she was like throwing up everything and stuff like that.
She was absolutely throwing up.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, it's like from the moment that she started partying all the way until she was probably at the toilet throwing up, she was just in full beast mode, Tommy. And it was like then and there that I was like, this makes so much sense. I was like, this makes so much sense, man. I was like, I just found somebody way more fearless than Tommy.
Yeah, no, that's I guess the other side of Ellie, which I love a lot, right? So, and in addition to that, like I think she's very strong, independent as well. If you think about it, like she left her family from Taiwan, right? Basically go to college in overseas, which is U.S., right? And kind of like almost kind of starting over in a way, right? So I think it takes a lot, I think, to like, hey, I'm just gonna go study college abroad, right? And of course, ultimately end up staying here, but it's a big thing. Even something that I potentially thought about, but of course I didn't pull the trigger, right? So in that regard, right? It's like so much more brave than I am,
How long before or after you guys started dating that you decided to marry her?
Between 2 and 3 years, I believe. That's what I recall now. And of course, she's gonna say I'm wrong, but she's traditionally I'm one of those Asians that's not very good with math. I'm not very good with dates, and remembering a whole bunch of shit. So I'm sure I'm wrong, but I remember 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I'm just glad that we were there to celebrate your 1 year anniversary together.
Oh yes, the Cosmo, yes,
Cosmo, that was a good time.
Yeah, it was.
Hey Ray, I got a question for you actually, right? Can you tell me, after spending so much time with Tommy, what's his fuse like on an average a day-to-day basis, like before kids?
I actually, honestly, Tommy is the most chillest guy I've ever met. Like, I feel like I've gotten more upset at things than he has, but when he gets mad, it's the nuclear bomb has gone off. Boom.
The two keys.
And you just gotta okay, step away, let the bomb, go off, let it do its thing, and let him cool off on his own. Because in that moment, let the man explode, you know. But
Yeah.
overall, honestly, like I feel like my time hanging out, there's probably a lot of things that could have set him off, and if he gets there, it's just let him be.
What would you bestow upon Ray and I if there was one piece of information that you would give to us about raising kids?
It's definitely patience and flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you cannot go in with a game plan and expect to stick with it, right? Ultimately, you have to be flexible and be patient.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way. Like I feel like I've gone through it, because at the beginning, I struggled, man. To be honest, I struggled hard, right? And keep in mind, I'm a strong believer in terms of like modeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I try to model for my kids, and if you think about like you learn, and again, not to shift blame anything against like your parents or your guardian or whomever's raising you, right? But like if you look at the way they behave, the way they I guess manage certain situations, it does reflect how you would manage certain situations as well, right? To a certain degree, right? Unless you're the type of person that actively seek out alternative and seek out, I guess, different way to kind of manage those feelings, right? But if you think about like going back to kind of like the cultural conversation where like a lot of Asian family, you don't have that type of conversations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't remember any time that I sat down with my parents and kind of talk to them like, hey, how do you feel? Like, like, could we handle this better? There's none of that, right? This mental health was non-existent.
Nope.
Right? I mean,
Still non-existent.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So because of that, it's not that kind of fast forward to like what I'm trying to do. It's like be the model that I want them to behave, right? Easier said than done, right? Easier said than done. It's tough, man, because I've certainly grown a lot in this area for the last 6 years. I probably learned a lot more in the past 6 years in terms of my temperament, right? How I see things, how I want to explain things, how basically overall, how do I want to model myself in front of the kids, right? And I think exponentially. Sorry, I can't speak the word. What's the word? Exponentially. Thank you. Sorry, you want to edit that out? But yeah, it increases, right? Because at the first 5 years, I was learning actually I would consider very slow paced, right? It's not until probably the past couple of years where I've probably grown tremendously in terms of patient and flexible, right? Because again, keep in mind, right? Like you always have a game plan going in, and you want to raise, like who doesn't raise good kids? Who doesn't want, kids to be successful? And the list goes on and on, right? Who doesn't want to do that? So then you in your mind, you have a certain way that you want them to behave, a certain way you want them to act. You want a certain way you expect them to learn. But human nature, people learn differently. They all have their own temperament. They have their own style, right?
Yeah.
And then sometimes, and maybe often, it clashes, right? And then of course, like you having your adult lens on and looking at that stage is like and as you get older, you're more rigid, right? If you don't mentally actively work on that, you're rigid. Like I was rigid, and if you're rigid, you tend to break more. But then over time, I learned like, hey, like I gotta put a lens on that. Like as a kid, right? Like how do I want the parent to kind of like talk to me, treat me, and model, But then again, those like, easier said than done, right? For me, it is, and for other people, it's probably easy, and maybe for other people, it's a lot harder. And then you got your bell curve, right? So again, my best advice is like, hey, just patience and be flexible. And I mean, flexible, I know it's very general, but flexible in terms of changes. And you don't always have to stick to the game plan down to the T, right? You don't have to cross out the T and dot all the I's, really. and able to kind of move and go with the flow.
I'm writing stuff down as you're speaking, just so you know. I just came up with a really good title for your podcast episode, by the way, just listening to you.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Because that's the mental part that is super challenging, right? And then actually that goes to your work life and goes to kind of like your upbringing too, right? And going back to a conversation where we grew up, and in general, we see a lot of immigrants are working hard and hey, who hasn't heard this, right? Work hard, go to school, do well, get good grades, go to college, get a good job, right? That's it, right? And then after that, get married, have kids, buy a home, right? That's like the American dream. And then that's the stuff they teach at school, right? And because I think, so how that relates to kids is because think about us going through the system, you're actually in the system, you're going through the stages. And if you go out of that stage, it's very hard, right? Yeah. I'm telling you, if I tell a 13-year-old, hey, quit school right now, pursue your dream. Whoa, that's good. That's a no-no, right? That's a thing that you can't do. Hey, you want to be a dancer, or you want to be inventor, right? Do that stuff. But it's hard to break that mode. So it's the same thing with parenting, because you learning all that, same thing what you see with your parents and other family, and ultimately you gotta break all that. You say that doesn't even apply. It's a certain degree it applies. You want to cherry pick the good things, right? But ultimately, forget about that. Again, just break all that down. And human beings are human beings, and you just love your kid, and you want to be a good model to them as much as possible, right? And put yourself in their shoes.
All that makes a whole lot of sense.
Why was it that you named your sons Xander and Archer? They're obviously not culturally very Asian names. And Ray, I think you can elaborate a little more on this, but that was kind of one of the topics you brought up, right?
Yeah. When a person's looking for a job, we still live in America, and America, sometimes America is racist without even knowing it's racist. There are some well-intentioned people, but they don't know that their practices are discriminatory. And as immigrants, sometimes you need to take actions that kind of skirt that a little bit, so you don't fall into that hole. Like a Black person named, Shaquana, applying for a job at KPMG, the recruiter at KPMG may look at that name, and even though that person's got, 4.0 GPA, probably went to, top school, they might get disqualified based on their name. I know it doesn't happen all the time, but that's on. I used to be, in a position where I would hire people, and I've seen that happen with my peers. So, and I know it happens a lot with, the Asian community too, especially when we were growing up. Now with globalization, depending on what industry it is, if it's tech, it may be not so much, but even then, your name can be the thing that prevents you at sometimes from becoming a CEO. Yeah.
Was that all kind of your reasoning, Tommy? Does it all fall into that bucket of just molding well-rounded and giving them tools or like a name to get ahead?
Yeah, to a certain degree, it wasn't very at the conscious level. I didn't actively think about to get ahead, all right? But however, I did consciously thought about I do want something different, right? And again, to kind of break the mold, right? So that was conscious level, right? Just because, again, this maybe just going back to kind of my earlier statement, I do want to break the mold, and we don't have to do stuff so traditionally, but you do want to respect certain cultural tradition, etc. Should be aware of that. It's to make it clear, I'm not disregarding any of that. You want to be aware and understand, but especially here, if you kind of migrate to US, I think it definitely, to Ray's point, it definitely has certain advantages, right, in terms of names, etc. But again, but that particular piece, during that time, I didn't think actively about that specific point of it, But in my mind, say, hey, I want something that I thought was kind of cool and something non-traditional, right? Yeah. And that was probably the bulk of it. And it goes, maybe at the subconscious level, it falls aligned to what what Ray mentioned, right? Yeah.
Well, what about you? I mean, what about you, Ray? I mean, like, did when they named you or gave you your name, why'd they choose Raymond?
Uh, I don't know. I honestly, like, I think Ghana being a British colony, it's like one of those things where this is before my time. You know, when you're born, you have your Ghanaian name and you have your English name. That was just commonplace. You know, and it's what, you know, people who've been colonized, they do things to cater to whoever's in charge of them. You know, so I I was born Kwabna, and then my grandma named me Christian because she's a Christian. True story. She's very religious. So my name was supposed to be Christian, and then my dad's name was Richmond, so he wanted something that sounded a lot like his name. So then it got switched to Raymond. But for I think 3 years of my life, everybody was calling me Kwabna or Christian, and then my dad was like, "No, Raymond." So then I became Ray. But yeah,
that's okay. So wait, your family for a while called you Christian?
Christian, yeah. I mean,
Christian Boateng?
they called me Kwabna more than anything, but if
of course,
referring to my English name was Christian. I vaguely remember being called Christian because I was so young, but I know the thing, and I know specifically that they named me Christian because they were, you know, Christianity is the religion they practice, you know. So yeah. So I could be, you guys could be talking to Chris Boateng right now.
Yeah,
that is so weird. Like, it's so weird. I think I would have called you Chuck or something instead. I don't know, man. It's like Chris. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't sound bad. It's not a bad look on you, but you're just so much cooler than that. I don't know. No offense to any of the Chris's.
We know a lot of Chris's, bro.
I know. My nephew's Chris. I'm just saying, man. It's okay.
We know one that's a nurse. He's pretty badass.
Yeah. My wife is a Chris. Her name's Christina.
That's pretty. No.
Oh man. Anyway. No. So this kind of goes back to, you know, what, like the unique set of circumstances that Tommy grew up in, right? Like, not quite this, but definitely not quite that, but a little bit of this and a little bit of that, right? So it's like a mix and match kind of pot of experiences and education. But, you know, somewhere along the line, the route that you took was, I mean, I wouldn't say traditional, but in a lot of senses, very successful, right? Or established in America, right? Like, you have a career, you know, and you go through the same trials and tribulations as any professional. Has being Asian come into play at any point, either positively or negatively for you, anywhere along the road that you may remember?
Not that I remember, because fortunately, especially in the tech sector, right? It's a lot of minorities, right? And you're talking about like even offshore, nearshore, right? Yeah. So Asians, there's a lot of Asians in the tech sector, right? Let's put it mildly, right? Like good Indians, Chinese, and Vietnamese, and the list goes on and on and on, right? So I didn't feel like it's necessarily a disadvantage. Now, however, again, it is my exposure. I think the thing that I've noticed, like long time ago, but I think less now. Probably more so before, at the early stage of my career, like it's pretty common to have a non-Asian kind of like boss, right? You know, so then that's when I notice now. Has that hurt me, or did I feel that hurt me from terms of advancements, etc.? Probably not, because during that time I felt that you know at just my seniority level, I mean, I'm not that well seasoned, but that's something that I'm reflecting back now. Like, you know, like a lot of bosses were not right, and a lot of kind of like the worker bees, you know, like developers, tester, you know, etc. were kind of like, you know, more so than not were like minorities, right? But don't get me wrong, it's you know, the wonderful thing about tech sector, it is full blended. You know, you got your Caucasians, right? You got your Hispanics, right? You got Afro Americans, you got your Chinese, Vietnamese, and so on and so on. So I think it's fairly mixed, but again, it was not uncommon to meet another fellow Asian in the tech sector, right? It'd be surprising, like, hey man, if I was the only one, I cannot remember the time where I worked for a company where I was like the only Asian.
Was that something you chose proactively, or it just made sense to you and it was the reasonable thing for you to do?
It just makes sense, unfortunately. That
Unfortunately,
either unfortunately or fortunately, right? Because if you like, it goes back to my earlier statement, right? Like, you go to school, you try to get good grades. You go to college, you try to get good grades. You get a good paying job, and there you go, right? So if you think of that perspective, then yeah, absolutely, right? Like I achieved that, right? Like
yeah,
white collar worker, making decent amount of income, right? And compared to kind of like the U.S. kind of like
yeah,
I guess your U.S. income, medium income, right?
yeah,
But if you think about it, like where school teaches you to be almost like it kind of relates to that movie. What's the name of the movie? Shawshank Redemption, right? Where you kind of institutionalize, right? And I think the don't get me wrong, right? Like I have tons of benefits. I'm fairly happy about my career path, etc. But I think a lot of people also kind of like falls into this mode where 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 basically from school, from elementary all the way to for college, you're bred to be like an office worker, more or less, right?
yeah,
Like when was the last time like I don't recall going to school teaching me how to like really manage money, really manage investment, right? How can I really kind of like make myself out of that, right? It's like, hey, oh, you want to be a good electrician? Yeah, we have perfect classes for that. Oh, you want to become a doctor? Yeah, we have a program for that. Go to med school. And oh, you want to become like like IT worker? Yeah, that's perfect. We have a track for that. So I have tracks for this to become officer coach, which the economy needs. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's only so many kind of like bosses or investors, right? And they all need people to work in office to grow that investment, right? If you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So in that regard, I feel like maybe like if I had a mentor in that area where like hey, teach me about real money management, right? Not working hard, not saving money and putting in the bank, and not throwing some money in like some bonds or stocks, etc., right? Because that'll make you money. Don't get me wrong, right? I mean that'll make you a certain amount, but like really making you good money. And I don't want to phrase it where like money is everything, and that's not the point, right? It's like the point is like if you have the financial freedom through your investments where you're not working 9 to 5, like when this quarantine happened, I could spend full time with my family. I don't have to worry about
yeah,
like reporting up to my boss, right? Like Senegal Elliot doesn't have to worry about like meeting deadlines and things like that. Like we can focus 100%, right, on our kids, our family, or whatever the situation is, right? Like in addition to that, and if you read some articles, like a lot of people with financial means during this time, they afford to pay and put their kids into like these learning pods, right?
yeah,
And learning pods are not cheap. Who can afford that outside of the people that financially can't afford it, right? You know what I'm saying? Like if you think about like if you ask me like, Tom, can you afford it? Yeah, I at the end of the day I can afford it, yes, but it's a lot of money, right?
yeah,
But then to people that like maybe like blue collar worker or below certain threshold income, there's no way you can afford that. So you're automatic like their kid, and they put in their kids under like in that bracket, right? So going back to kind of like the college days, something that I in college that you have to decide a major, right? Like, oh shit, I started college. What is my major? Do I want to become an art student? Do I want to become this and that, right? And naturally, because what I've seen around, because the way I grew up, right, you want to go with the safest route. And during that time, the safe route in the 90s and heading to the early 2000s is tech, right? And that's a job that you feel pretty confident when you graduate, you will get a decent paying a job.
yeah.
And that's the track I followed, and that's the track that kind of led me to where I'm at now. I'm thankful for it because tech it's a great sector, right? we all need it, and it's still a booming market. Like if you're strong technically, you can easily get a job, or B, if you really excel at that and excel in multiple ways, you can, create your own company, develop your own apps and your own inventions, etc. Right? So I think it's as globally, it's technology. It's where it's at.
Yeah. I have to thank you because when I first met you, I wasn't working in tech. I was working full time in another industry, and I have to thank you for your guidance and helping me break into it. But I earlier what you said about like financial literacy, it's something that like I think about a lot now as an adult because growing up, I mean, we were dirt poor, and when you're dirt poor and you finally get some money, like as a kid, you're not thinking about saving. All you want to do is just go out and get all the things that you didn't get.
Exactly.
I get it. So, and for me, like that got me into a lot of trouble. So it's like I didn't have that mentor. And for me, it wasn't about like buying like the latest Jordans or that the materialistic item. For me, a lot of my money was just spent on experiences, hanging out with my friends. Hey, we're going to Vegas. Fuck it, let's go to Vegas. It's like you shouldn't go, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. But if I was building a school curriculum, or if I haven't had any input into a school curriculum, I think financial literacy should be just as important as the English class you got to take. I think for me personally, I think it's more important than the elective Spanish class you have to take, or because it's like we live in a capitalist society, and we all need to be financially literate, and I think it shouldn't be on our parents or to teach us that. Like it's so easy to get all that information while you're in school. It doesn't mean that teaching you financial literacy or teaching you how to manage a company doesn't mean that you're going to fall into that path of owning a company or becoming a hedge fund manager. But these are skills that we all need to have. It's just like learning how to ride a bike, or drive a car, like learning how to balance your checkbook. I think, right as soon as you get to middle school, that's something that should be part of the course. But, unfortunately, if you're in a public school system in LA, they probably don't teach you that. But I'm pretty sure a kid going to, Harbor Westlake or Notre Dame, like they get some of that, or
Right. Yeah, and if you think about it, for the parents that are able to send kids at that kind of like Ivy League or private school, right? I mean, you actually learn that from your parents, really, right? It's passed on. If you think about it, right? Like Elon Musk, or even Bill Gates, right? Or like any of the kind of like top names, like if they have kids, they would teach their kid to a certain degree, and there might be exceptions, right? So I get it, right? And I threw some names out there, but it may or may not match. What I'm saying is like, generally speaking, a lot of I guess like rich or kind of like financially stable I guess families, or they would teach your kid how to kind of like be financially literate and able to manage money, right? And again, the goal is like I think you mentioned it correctly, right? It's like not to like run your own company, etc., but you learn to have a good balance of like having fun. Like we all should go out and go to Vegas. We all should go out to Cancun and spend that money, because those experiences that you do at different stages of life, and you have like different fun, right? Because if I go to Cancun right now versus when I was in my 20s, it's a different experience, right? And there's no money in the world can provide the experience back now of how it's like in my 20s, right? So, but again, one thing that school I think probably could do a much better job is it's providing that framework mentality, and to even grow your investment more. I think it's more beneficial for the economy, because then if everyone does that, then you have less people on welfare. You have less people like worrying about paying the rent because they manage the money, right? And I get it. I mean, everyone's situation is different. I don't want to say like, yeah, if everyone learned that, then for sure you've been X, Y, Z. It's just very situational. I get it.
I mean, but the more you can lift people out of poverty, the less crime you'll have.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
But it's and I think when you come from a well-off family, it's easier to pass down soft skills that you might not even realize,
Mm-hmm.
And for you, for Peter, for me, for me and Peter and I, when we have kids, I know that my kids, I'm never going to want them to go through what I went through. I don't want my kids to have to work since middle school, have to go to school full time while they're in college. I want, and fortunately for you, Tommy, you're able to provide that for your kids. Your kids are going to be benefiting from that, and then Archer and Xander, when they have kids, they're going to be benefiting from that. So that you and Kat have set up your family generation to like, all right,
Yeah.
Carry on and provide, and
Mm-hmm.
and now it's Peter's our turn to have kids and do that.
Right.
You mean like me and you? You want to adopt a kid, like together? You want to raise the kid with me?
Adopt a half black, half Asian kid. All right.
That would be beautiful. You know how I feel about that. I'm like, yeah.
and Ray, you nailed it, right? Because that to me, that's the point, right? Because you want to pass this along. Because right now, for Xander, I'm already talking about investments. I'm already talking about working smartly, right? Working hard is great. Don't get me wrong, right? Certain things you have to work hard. Like, hey, you want to be the top basketball player, right? You have the talent. You gotta be like Michael Jordan. You gotta be the first one in, last one out. Put the effort in. You gotta, if someone's shooting, like 1,000 basketballs in a basket, you gotta be shooting 2,000, right? I get it, right? But other hand, like it comes to kind of like money management and learning financially. Like you have to start learning investment. Think about investment when you're young. Because you get older, I think there's a fear factor, and that's what I go through because I have a fear factor, and I feel like I have more to lose now, right? Like I can't say, you know what, I'm tired of this job, I'm gonna quit tomorrow. Yeah. Wow, that's a big deal. Like who's gonna pay the rent and who's gonna pay tuition for the kids and the food and the list is a big list of crap, right? That's baggage in a certain degree, right? That anchors you down from moving forward or kind of gambling or taking the next step, right? And I'm not saying that makes you any happier or sadder. Just if you want to go to a different path and experiment, it might pull you back a little bit, right? Yeah. So I'm trying to teach Xander now, like, hey, start thinking about investment. And I use Monopoly as an example, right? Like, how do you make money in Monopoly? How do you win in Monopoly, right? First, you gotta maybe start off small, buy some properties here and there. And then start building some homes and then build a hotel, right? Yeah. And then when people land your hotel, you get money, right?
What do you say when he's like, I rolled the dice and I'm in jail?
Hey, life sucks, right? You overcome it. When it's your turn, how do you break out of jail, right? Right. So they struggle with this stuff, and that's the part that I'm learning as well as a parent. And this is stuff that again, it goes back to it doesn't seem like these type of conversation happens a lot with first generation immigrants coming to the US, right? And again, those are my lens, right? I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but my experience, it happens, and I've seen friends that we just don't talk about that. It just never really talked about. So I'm assuming it's not uncommon not to have that type of conversation. So again, and I'm trying to help my son start thinking about that. Hey, start thinking about investment, thinking about what can we do? And of course, there's a balance. And I told him money's not about everything, right? Because when you say that it was a kid, and most people think, oh yeah, if I have lots of money, I can do this. I'm like, well, that's not the point, right? The point is not to have money. It's it's everything's a balance, balance in life and happiness and going through those emotions and etc. All those are great things, it just everything's a balance.
Yeah, I think go back to what Peter says. What do you tell him if he rolls the dice and lands in jail? It's like I would tell him, if you manage your money right, if you land in jail, jail's gonna be completely different.
Yeah, exactly.
If you fall into the criminal justice system, versus, having decent jobs, completely different experience. But you're right, money isn't everything, but you want to have the experience where you can enjoy life and not have to think about things that are just, you don't want to have to think about, where's my next meal? How am I going to pay rent? You don't want to have,
exactly.
It doesn't mean that you're a billionaire. You don't need to become a billionaire to have that, but you want to me, the way I've kind of framed it as an adult now. I think we all have a finite amount of time on planet Earth,
Mm-hmm.
however long or short that may be. You want to maximize your experience and you want to have as much fun as possible with the people around you. You don't want to spend your time being depressed or sad or angry. You just want to have fun because when the more fun you're having with your loved ones, the longer you live, then it's just better for your overall health. And if
Mm-hmm.
money is something you have to think about all the time, that's debilitating. I
It
can
is, yeah.
tell you from experience, like it's scary as fuck. And it's refreshing when you could just enjoy the people around you and enjoy the time we have, with each other.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it goes back to kind of like the balance, right? It's like if you want to become a painter, awesome, let's do it. Let's be all in. But hey, let's also be financially smart about it, right? You know, Picasso didn't get rich until he died, right? Or like people, it's those things, right? Like you have to die for the art before you before your shit becomes valuable, right? By that time, it's really too late. So it's again, it goes back to like I'm trying to like educate or kind of pass it along, So hopefully I'm doing the right thing, but who knows, right?
Yeah.
So I gotta ask you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, your son's gonna see this podcast one day.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and regardless of what the world looks like, right? What is the one thing that if your sons are watching this, would you want them to strive for, or what would you tell them that will help them regardless of what the world looks like at that time?
Ooh, it's a tough one. Yeah.
It is, right?
Yeah. I mean, this may sound cliche, but like do whatever you can to be happy.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's really the bottom line. Like, why do we work? Right. Like, why do we go to work? Because we want to maybe buy stuff that makes us happy, or maybe use the money to do stuff that makes us happy. Right. It goes on to our happiness, but everyone defines it differently. So really two things, right? Like be financially smart, right? Such as investment that basically set multiple paths for you to be more happy, right? And again, the focus is not about making money, because if you just focus on making money, you're not happy, right? And if you've seen the people that just works and works because they want to get the money, but they're not spending, they're not doing, right? They just don't look happy. And maybe you guys came across like friends or fellow coworkers that are like that, right? I came across a few, right? So to me, that's not my recommendation. That's not my message. It's like find whatever makes you happy, but also you got to anchor yourself the reality of this world where you need financial backing for that happiness. You cannot be happy, cannot pay for the rent. You cannot be happy worrying about the next meal, right? You cannot be happy if you ask yourself, I don't have the funds to go on this trip. You just can't. That's not the world we live in. We don't live in a village where everyone's working together and there's no sense of currency and everybody's doing the thing and supporting each other. Then if we live in a village, awesome. If they decide to like go to a cult in that type mentality, then that's perfect, man. Then that's power to them, right?
No Xander, no Archer. Don't join a cult. That's not what your dad means.
yeah. Don't join a cult. But what I'm saying is like be financially smart and think about the future, because investing in homes, investing in business, investing in XYZ, whatever it's appropriate, is that you can potentially pass that on to your family, to your kids, and so on and so on. So you build your wealth starting from generation X, right? Because here's a perfect example. I had a coworker, that very nice guy, trust fund, but the trust fund didn't kick in until it was like 40-ish, I think. And we're talking about millions of dollars. We're not talking about like 10, 20,000, like even I'm talking about in the millions, right? And I think, and the funds are passed down, I think from a few generations now.
Oh, yeah.
So basically the idea is to have that fund in the trust, in the trust fund accumulating money.
Yep.
Until the dog gets older. So for example, I don't know the real number, right? But let's say you have $10 million, right? You have $10 million, you put into this fund, right, for your kid, right? And then as he gets older, let's say the maturity of that fund is he's like 30, 40, whatever time you said, but it should be long enough that 10 million becomes maybe 20, 30, 40 million dollars, right? By the time that the child, the baby turns an adult. So in return, assuming you teach that kid the right thing to do, then they would not spend that 40, $50 million like on drugs. They would use the same 10 million or 15 or whatever it is into adjustment for their kids. Yeah. Right. So you basically pass it along, and then not only that, you're making money, right? So that's the idea of an investment that I want to start kind of like teaching my kid about, which I need to do a better job about that, right? Which I'm always trying to brainstorm, but again, is a fear factor, subconsciously and consciously, right, from my perspective, that forced me to build that wealth, really, right? That wealth for my kid, right? And the goal is not to build like snooty kids, right, and stuff like that. It's just like be smart with your money, then basically use that to build wealth for your family, and then keep on going and going on, and you don't have that financial struggle, right? And I think a lot of rich people, if you think about it, they tend to do that, right?
Yeah, it's easier when you have that financial cushion to explore and take risks. You know,
exactly.
Like if your son says that he, wants to travel abroad or he wants to become a filmmaker, he can spend, years not making any money, and boom, so it's hard for immigrants to do that type of thing because we don't want to risk failure,
Yeah, you can, right? Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we'll never have to work harder than our parents did, and that's kind of like the thing that I kind of just hang on to, knowing that no matter how hard it is for me right now, it will never be as hard as how they had it.
Yep, exactly.
And that's all I need to know. And then hard work is just work.
Yeah, no, and I'm thankful for that, right? I mean, someone has to initially go find a farm, look at the field, right, and decide to anchor down, and then start, combing the dirt and getting it ready, right? So someone needs to put in those work, and I feel that like my parents put in that effort when they came over. So then now it's like, what do we do with it from here? Like how do I now grow the farm? How do I plant crops, or of course figuratively speaking, right? And how do I ensure that whatever I'm doing, it gets passed down to the next generation and so forth, right? Yeah. So it's a tough thing, like I also, I have internal struggle, as well, right? Like anything, it's human nature, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Am I blaming people? Like, it's just human nature, and it's hard to overcome those type of feelings.
Just reinforce some of the things that you've taught me in the past about working smarter, not harder. And I think sometimes it's easy for me to fall into that category because I'm just catching myself, instead of like working out in the morning, I'm going to work, or like, and as I'm telling you guys about me time, I'm reminding myself, fuck, I haven't been doing a lot of me time, it's like coming home tired, I'm have a drink and play video games, but I haven't done the stuff that actually gonna take care of my body, things like that. So it was refreshing to talk to you again and hearing you say that stuff, because it reinforces, what you've always taught me, so I thank you for doing this for us.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, it's my pleasure. Yeah, hopefully it helps you guys. Sounds like it did. And for the people that's listening to the podcast, hopefully they can take some pointers,
Yeah, for sure.
Tommy, thank you again. We can't thank you enough for coming on, man. Like, as always, it's been a great experience for us. I hope you do come on again. Maybe we could, have Ellie kind of confirm some of those facts.
That'll be fun. Yeah. Hey, I don't mind. I love it. So thanks, guys.
Man.
All right. Thanks.
Everyone.
Have a good night.